It's dog eat dog, it's many man. Fend for yourself, take what you can. 'Cause every path has their own plan. And who will I be when the wolves come knocking? Will I see that it's a snake that's talking? Can't look back once you start walking. All we really need is love. All we really need is love, and I feel strange fire. I've been burned into that ocean, and I
This is Breaking Batch. We're coming back with hour number 2, presented by our friends at Greenwood Chevrolet on Mahoning Avenue in Austintown, with a video coordinator. His name is Mark Preto, and we'll talk about what it's like to do videotape at both the college and professional football levels. Mark knows all about that. He's had quite a distinguished career, and that's coming up next right here on Breaking Batch, live inside the YSN studios in East Palestine.
Hi everyone, this is DJ Yoakley with Your Sports Network. We appreciate your support of YSN and welcome you to the YSN family. Our broadcast streams are brought to you live at no cost to you by sponsors that are local to this community. Without the vision and generosity of our sponsors and partners, we would not be able to bring this game to you today. So please support the great businesses and leaders that are making this game possible. And if you're a business in need of great advertising and sponsorship opportunities, feel free to head over to our site for more information on the right fit for you. We are local, we are loyal, and we are live. We are YSN.
Your journey to a better vehicle starts at the Mahoning Valley's #1 new car dealer, Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
We're back at hour number 2 of YSN's Breaking Batch, presented by our friends at Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown and also Hubbard Chevrolet out in Hubbard, logically. And due to the Corona scare, that they're on hold too until April the 6th. We'll talk to Jeff Risnar from 898 Marketing on Thursday, more about that, who's heavily associated with Greenwood Chevrolet. Right now, I turn my attention to a longtime friend of mine, Mark Preto, who's the Youngstown State University video coordinator. How you doing, Mark?
Doing well, John. Doing well. Long time no see, my friend. Long time no see.
Yeah, a long time for certain. I want to ask you about being a video coordinator. Now, you're coming off a coaching change. Bo Pelini steps down, and here comes Doug Phillips into the YSU football program. So when a coaching change takes place, Mark, does that affect your job status at all? What was that process like for you with the ouster or the departure, if you will, of Pelini for LSU and bringing in a brand-new head coach?
It was very easy for me. I had, a strong backing, strong history, so these guys were coaching staff, enjoyed coming in, meet me, and hopefully we're getting along pretty well like we are. But it's like any transition, sometimes a coach can come in and wants his own video guy or even a trainer or a strength coach. So you have to kind of, sit there and be there for and support the new guys coming in and show them that you're there for them, for the university to this is football. It's what we're excited about doing.
What's your job responsibilities? What's that like being a video coordinator for the football program?
It's, John, it's kind of like a jack of all trades, but just when it comes to basically working with guys and you know technology a little better than them. But I'm in charge of staffing so that we can cover recording all of the games, but mostly the practices. There's a lot. We'll probably run 6 cameras at practice, depending on the drill and what the coaches want to cover. But then we're also in a network situation where everything gets dumped onto a network, and we go through and trim video and splice video together so you can see a sideline and end zone, or sometimes end of ground level, depending on the drills. And then we spit that out to, it's called projects. So it's basically where in the program the coaches can grab and watch the games or the practices or cut-ups. And our cut-ups are, simple 1st and 10, at the first down of a series. There's multiple different levels of cut-ups that each coach wants to watch in terms of game planning, in terms of evaluating.
And you're responsible for the editing as well as the actual videotape original presentation with a camera?
Yes. And then including that is like if they want to put a presentation in the edit to watch, I get through that process. The other thing, too, is just before, and sadly I didn't get to finish, I was hanging new projectors in classrooms, and there's one classroom I didn't get to get finished before we got called off of work. So, I've done things where we've installed cables. When I was at USC, they installed a new downstairs classrooms, and I was spending all night splicing and soldering cables so they can get ready for the next day for meetings. So it's a jack of all trades. And even at Oregon, one of the things we ended up doing was running, which I'll call it XLR cable. You know what that is, but it's speaker cable and stuff, so that we can connect for the coaches up in the booth and on the ground with normal, modern, at that time, what we have now, just headsets for the coaches.
How much has the technology changed, Mark, during your long career being a video coordinator?
When I first started this after playing at Akron, we were still on film. We were videotaping at the same time, the games. That's what I was doing. But on the side of it, mostly we were film. So I was used to splicing film for practice and cutting it and truly editing it. Basically, it was tape. Then we got into the video a year later where we're going from machine controlled. This is all before even Windows even showed up on the scene. Did that at Oregon through, we get to USC where it becomes nonlinear, as they called it at the time, basic computer-based. USC was one of the first, at least on the West Coast, where we connect a computer editor and detached storage to one remote desktop, and that was by fiber channel. Eventually, you get the net caught up, and we've gone through, even with the Titans, we were still doing tape. It was digital tape, even though we were nonlinear, but we would output the tape and guys would watch on tape. By the time we got to the Titans later on, it was starting to switch over to where it was the network came involved, and it's database, it's a network in terms of Cat 5, Cat 6, then it became database driven. It was Oracle database at some point, and then became SQL database. So it just keeps going. The biggest thing that always hinders it is how fast a computer can handle anything.
Is there any more? Is there programs from a video tape perspective that are more advanced than others due to perhaps cost?
I think there's a difference, and the difference is one company that's out there that mostly everyone has is a company that's called Exos. They started as part of Avid. They became Avid Sports because Avid was a publicly traded company, and then some at universities was an issue because no one can afford the outright cost. That's what happened with at USC when I was there. So we kind of ended up leasing it. So that's because of their Hollywood affiliation and their engineers in terms of codec and all that. And then I think we're also the first on the database, and their database was probably a little bit more difficult to deal with. We use DB Sport, based out of here at Pittsburgh. The company guy, he was a video guy at Washington State, worked for Exos, which is at the time was a different name company, but he saw an easier way. It's more friendly for the coaching staffs, so it really does well for, the 49ers have it, so, they've had both. So they've been the Super Bowl on both. we have it here, and it's just made for a little bit easier to work with for coaches.
And our coaches, when they get video back from you, I imagine they give you instruction about what they want. And I'm sure you've possibly had run-ins with coaches like, I don't like this. This is not what I asked for. And I'm sure you have some stories about that from your past.
I don't know, that or more of a printer issue sometimes too. Everything is, something goes wrong. You could be the guy. You're more the zero sometimes than the hero, because if things go right, they don't tell you. But that's, who cares? It's not what But I'm here to do what these guys want, what they need, and that goes from if I have to make a report for them or cut up. Like right now, just before you called, I was on the phone with the coach. We're all working from home at the same time, all meeting through various platforms like Teams from Microsoft and other stuff. These guys are trying to meet and just as a staff and keep going, keep evaluating, getting ready for hopefully a spring ball that comes up.
Right.
At the meantime, they've got to teach players what their philosophy is and how they're going to play, technique and stuff like that. Still, that's just before we get into truly the X and O's of what we're gonna run plays and stuff like that. So right now, kind of sit here and I brought some personal stuff home to work on for some coaches still, but at the same time, I'm taking phone calls and modern technology. Like I can do a login and see what a coach is doing on his laptop and help him fix it rather than trying to talk through the phone. And that's just like I said, we go back to technology, how it comes. Like there was times I'd be out training with Kent State on the snowy road with film and videotape, to going to LAX, hitting the Delta Dash with the box. We can't do that now anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're trading everything over the internet. The NFL has the CGE system, which is it's for NFL and NFL films between New York and LA, plus individual teams. Like being a pro day, I would have sent that in. That would have got out to the NFL through the CGE, and then at the collegiate level, we use Dragonfly.
Interesting. I'm learning so much about the tech side of it, too, from you. Hey, we're going to take a break, Mark. We're with Mark Prito. He is the Youngstown State University video coordinator for the football program. We'll be back with Mark. We'll talk about his distinguished career. It saw several stops in the NFL and some prominent major colleges, in addition to his current status with Youngstown State University, when we return to hour number 2 of Breaking Batch, presented by our good friends at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Your journey to a better vehicle starts at the Mahoning Valley's #1 new car dealer, Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
And back on hour number 2 of YSN's Breaking Batch, presented by our friends at Greenwood Chevrolet. A couple of sports notes for you. I'm sure you're probably aware by now, but the Tokyo Olympics, which was scheduled for later this year, has been officially postponed until a to-be-determined date in 2021. And the Panthers, as many speculated, are going to release quarterback Cam Newton. I'm kind of surprised to some degree that Ron Rivera, having such a history with Cam Newton, didn't take a look at him as the new hire with the Washington Redskins, but they went in another direction, especially since I think the jury's out on a lot of these one-year quarterbacks, and I think you probably want to secure some backup help just in case. The problem is that all these guys, they talk about the Daltons and the Winstons and the Cam Newtons, they all want playing time. They're used to being starters, so that presents an issue too. We're with Mark Prito. He's the Youngstown State University football video coordinator, and Mark's just sharing all this tech stuff with me, which is kind of Greek to me in some regards, but I learned from you, and it's very interesting. Let's take you on a couple of your stops throughout your illustrious career. Very early on, I think there was Akron University, correct, Mark?
Yeah, I was a walk-on there and, did my role in that, and eventually became inside when they started to go into, I was finishing up my fall semester, I was graduating, so they kind of had me come in that spring also, and got into just doing the technology part of it, getting stuff for coaches, video-wise, so they can watch film cut-ups. It was something new for that level. The Big Ten had done something the year before, which, to some degree was a year after most of the NFL came off of film. So, that's how I got into it. Through recommendation, I got it out to Oregon from the company, whose this time was LSVE out of Fort Lauderdale, and that company's gone on to through many iterations, but it's Exos and still the one that has most of college and NFL. But you had Mr. Kozar on earlier, and kind of funny story there is, 92, that summer, I was actually an intern, summer intern with the Browns, with Bill and that, and was able to see his first all-hands meeting. To me, I was like, Dad asked how he was, and I said, this guy knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. So I don't wait till you see if he can win, but that was just for the summer. And I ended up going, because I started out at Oregon as a GA, and so that summer, it was questionable about me coming back because I had not gotten a graduate school there at that time, so I was coming back maybe, but I ended up getting hired on as a full-time assistant, mostly because of basketball, and the current coach, Mark Turgeon, was an assistant at Maryland, even though he was an assistant there at Oregon, so there's some basketball there. So that's how I kind of ended up back out in Oregon for assistant for a couple of years, and then eventually took over and was there through 94, which was the Rose Bowl against Penn State.
So at your time at Oregon, you crossed paths with Chip Kelly?
Oh, no. That was long before Chip.
Long before Chip.
It was Rich Brooks.
Oh, Brooks. I'm sorry. That's what I meant to say. So what was your relationship like with Coach Brooks?
It was good. I mean, it was a close staff. When there's, I guess, the Oregon Trail, those guys have been there that were still there through Chip Kelly. When I was there, they just got their starter, had been there for a while. So it was a good long staff. I mean, we started Gang Green, not Joe Green. So with that staff, going into the Rose Bowl, it's funny. There's a gal that was a roommate of mine. She's graduated. I was friends with her and her other friends when I first got there, and she's still on air at KDUCT out there in Eugene. So it was just, didn't really cross paths.
And Mark, where are you originally from? Where's home for you? You're Ohio guy.
I grew up. I'm up there in Cleveland, east side, about a mile or two down from Collinwood High School.
So what's it like for you you're in different parts of the country and you're working in something that's a passion for you in football, because you're also spending some time with the Beavers up at Oregon State, up in the northwest portion of the United States.
Yep. Yeah, I get there because of the connection with Mike Riley at USC. Not that great coaching staff. Rob Marinelli was on the staff. Joe Barry was on the staff as a young grad assistant. So I ended up there at Oregon State with Mike for a year. You get used to moving around. Like, at some point, I moved from LA to, basically I was moved from LA back to Cleveland because I was going to probably stay and maybe volunteer at the Browns. But the guy the Browns video guy said, no, go back to Oregon State for that year. So I went back and we did some technology stuff there. We were on the first, we were able to get technology in there for the coaches so that they could watch video similarly on a network. And then it's kind of interesting. Is I had a job with Amsterdam Admirals. Then the guys from the Browns hired me as their third guy, recommended me for the Titans in New Orleans, and Carolina. So the only reason I probably didn't go to Amsterdam was I never got the contract and the sacks, and I got hired by the Browns. And then kind of Dad and I drove, watched the '98 Super Bowl in Bend, Oregon, ended up in Chicago, took a flight down to Nashville, took a flight back from Chicago. Dad and I moved down to Nashville.
So I take it you're not married and there aren't kids, because that would be really tough on the family moving around so much.
Yeah, there's, yeah. I mean, I got engaged when I was in Oregon, and everything was great. And she just realized that, she went to college, never finished college because she had a young baby at the time. Really wanted to go back to college. We're still great friends to this day. Really accomplished what she wanted to accomplish in her life. Nashville became kind of a second home over the course of the 5 years I was there. Just the great people I meet and all that. And yeah. But when you're moving a lot, you know. College, you moved too much, you know, that was for sure. I had 5 years in Nashville, and then, unfortunately, business is business, so I ended up out in San Francisco, technically Santa Clara for 12 years.
But before we get to the NFL portion of it, we're talking to Mark Prito, the Youngstown State University football coordinator. You landed at one of the most prestigious universities. Talked about your time in L.A. You're at Southern California with the Trojans program.
Yeah, I mean, they never had a full-time video guy. Joe Barry, you know, I can't remember exactly where he's coaching now. He was their video guy as the next player. So I ended up down in there in L.A., got to move in with a guy named Jamie, and he was our strength coach. He happened to be from Menor. So it was nice working with John Robinson and Mike Riley, and like I said, just many coaches have gone onto the NFL from that staff. It was just interesting. It was a tight-knit group, hard-nosed, you know, football, you know, like the USC football that you see on TV. You know, John Robinson's an intelligent man. Just to watch him walk around, he's always thinking about something. And
a legend. It ties with John Madden and the Raiders back in the 70s.
Yeah, well, it's a Santa Clara group. You know, that goes all the way up to Oregon State, you know, with Len Casanova. Mm-hmm. You know, those are the Santa Clara guys. And so it was an honor. You know, you walk out, you know, and you're walking. There's offices on the outside, but it's mostly like the inside was a museum at the time. Still is a little bit, and you're walking past Heisman's and like, okay, that's a new one for me. And then, you know, John's a smart guy, and he's, you know, like to, you know, trying to remember some of these stories. But it was so interesting to work there and just how things are, and yet at the same time, here I am one summer on the scaffolding that was probably this since John earlier, and I'm having to haul up plywood just so I can get rid of the dead plywood on this scaffolding that we're sitting on. But you know, you're working there, and then growing up in Cleveland, you know, you're either Ohio State, Michigan, or Notre Dame fan. Our family happens to be Notre Dame, so having to play Notre Dame and having my uncles and then come out and for a free game was pretty special, you know.
Oh, I would imagine so. So you're a Notre Dame fan. You're working for Southern Cal, their longtime rival. You get to the NFL, and you find yourself in a Super Bowl, and against the Rams. I think it was on a cruise ship when that took place. It was a great finish. Come down to a couple yards at the end on a play, but you strike up a friendship. And what was it like with Steve McNair, Air McNair, who was wonderful to you? Sort of took you under his wing to some degree, and the Tennessee Titans experience.
It was, I mean, you walk in and Bruce Matthews there, and you're like, wait, I just watching him play how many years ago? So that was the first thing. And then, yeah, Steve was awesome to everyone in the support staff. He was very good, really special with the equipment guys and that. But, yeah, he would, you know, take us out, you know, give us some money, take us out for a nice lunch or something like that at a nice little barbecue place. He just cared about everybody, and he was always a happy guy, always having fun. I said, you know, watching Bruce Matthews playing, but you know, but you're like, okay, Bruce been there 20 years, and yet they're playing Duck Duck Goose before practice. And then you got Frank Wycheck, you know, I think was a special tight end, and you know, just you go, yeah, you're going to the Super Bowl, and I can't remember the backup quarterback right now because he played with the Steelers and lost that one with them. But, you know, I had a relationship with him because he was like, he always counted, like, how many plays did I play just so I don't get screwed on my bonus. But, yeah, the Super Bowl was special. I mean, getting to the Super Bowl was dangerous almost. It was big ice age, ice storms all over the place in Atlanta, where we ended up having a small plane, and we threw everybody on it, all these things. And me and Jim Schwartz were in the first row behind the pilots in a little prop plane, with our knees up in the air and bags underneath our feet. We had a crab in because it was so windy.
What about the weather, the elements, the conditions when you're filming and everything? Okay, you got snow, you got rain, you got wind. You know, nothing frustrates me more as a viewer than watching a game and I want to yell because I know they have a hoodie over the camera, but you see sprinkles of rain on it, and then they got to switch to another camera. It's frustrating and it's continuously challenging, but you're responsible for doing the videotaping. But sometimes you have to battle Mother Nature up there, do you not? And sometimes not in the most comfortable of settings, as you talked about scaffolding and some of the situations that you're put into.
Yeah, definitely in college, depending. Nowadays, a lot of colleges have an indoor. You can have an indoor here at YSU, but back in the past, a lot of times you didn't have an indoor. There's those challenges. We're at USC and we're playing Illinois, and my end zone guy has to go on the scaffolding, and it's lightning out, and I might get out of there. We're scaffolded at USC, and for a long time there were lifts, at practice. Most of the NFL have gone away. If they don't have an indoor like out there to Santa Clara, they don't have an indoor, but they have. We were in lifts for a long time. Boom lifts, which are very safe. But everyone's gone technology-wise. They're going to this thing called a master cam. Again, it's a very expensive piece of equipment, but that way no one has to go up in the air into the wind. I mean, I had no problem. I wasn't too scared because I knew the boom lifts are very safe.
What was it like being? I was just going to ask you. Go ahead, continue, Mark. But I was going to ask you what it was like being at the Super Bowl and that experience. It's a dream come true for a lot of people. But continue your first story.
Okay, yeah. No, it's going to the Super Bowls. I mean, the first Super Bowl, you're there. You're trying to treat it like a game. Like it's just a game, but it's not a game. And you wait. It's a little times a little overwhelming just because of security, and during the week you're practicing someplace. We try to keep it as normal. So for me, it was somewhat normal. Go to practice, come back, work. It was just setting up, working in an environment where you're not at home, but we try to make it like we're at home. So we have the software company that we're using, whether it was DV Store or Exos, whatever. They would come out and make it so that you were working at home. And we did the same thing in London twice, where we were working like we were at home as far as our network goes. When you get into the game, it was kind of, that's when you really hit you when you get into the game that, oh man, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay to get here.
Yeah, I know. You had to pinch yourself, and it has to be surreal. Security's not always the friendliest people either. They can be quite rude about it. And I understand that process a little bit. You spent some glorious years, too, with the San Francisco 49ers. You mentioned up in the Santa Clara complex. That had to be an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, 12 years, great family. It was very family, business when I got there. It's a great family. Everyone got along. It wasn't a big facility like you would compare it to Ohio State, but it was a great place. Still is a great place. They expand a little bit. My boss was kind of him and his brother were very well known video guys, working with championship level. I left Oregon State when Dennis Erickson got there, and I told him I was going to Cleveland to work in the NFL, and he told me he'd never get back in the NFL, and then here he is at the 49ers when I get there. So,
oh boy.
But working with high-class people, intelligent people for a number of years, and then watching guys from the past start coming back, and it's an experience when Jerry Rice walks in and Tom Rathman's your coach, one on the coaching staff, and you're talking to legends.
Yeah, definitely. And you came across a lot of them in your lifetime. Who were your favorite NFL players that you got to chum up with during your career?
John Runyon. He and I had a great talk. And he's currently with the NFL office, but he was a senator, I think, out of Pennsylvania. But we had a long talk about life, things at the Pro Bowl back in 2002, 2003, I believe it was. Steve McNaird, just very friendly to us. Joe Nedney was another one that I had with the Titans and the Niners. I think he was happy to see me at the Niners, so I kind of gave him a face that he knew and stuff. Jim Tunstall was another guy, who went from an assistant coach to a head coach, and but other things. There's guys not necessarily with the teams. There's a guy named Mark Gorsuch was very influential in my career, as well as Henry Cantu, who's with Buffalo Bills. Mark, obviously, is the scout with the Steelers, but he's known more of the guy that starts the 40-yard dash for the combine. And there's some, guys from the Green Bay Packers. He's one of the original video directors, and is able to because I was out there in Green Bay for basketball, was able to go down to Milwaukee and catch that last Green Bay Milwaukee game down there at the baseball stadium. So those guys, helped me out a lot. And Patrick Dolan's a guy that he's with Philadelphia now. And he's a guy that kind of really helped me get into the NFL officially. He's the one that hired me at the Browns, and then got me to the Titans. And I saw him at CSVA last year, but I saw him at the coaching convention AFCA in Nashville this past January, and he always reminds me of what he did for me. And then Henry, who's with Buffalo Bills, always gives me the finger because he was the other side of the Miracle City, Music City Miracle.
Yeah, which was one of the most incredible plays. Buffalo will never forget that play, will they?
No, and I love when it comes up Super Bowl weekend. I get to see the 2 Super Bowls I've been in, and they're still top 15, and I get to still watch us lose again.
Yep. We're going to take a break. We're talking to Mark Preto. He's a Youngstown State University football coordinator. Curious to get Mark's perspective on not only the coaching change and what that means for the football program, but what Mark witnessed over the last couple of years at Youngstown State and what he anticipates coming with a brand new head coach, Doug Phillips, in 2020. When we return on YSN's Breaking Batch, presented to you proudly by Greenwood Chevrolet.
This is DJ Yoakley with Your Sports Network. We appreciate your support of YSN and welcome you to the YSN family. Our broadcast streams are brought to you live at no cost to you by sponsors that are local to this community. Without the vision and generosity of our sponsors and partners, we would not be able to bring this game to you today. So please support the great businesses and leaders that are making this game possible. And if you're a business in need of great advertising and sponsorship opportunities, feel free to head over to our site for more information on the right fit for you. We are local, we are loyal, and we are live. We are YSN.
Your journey to a better vehicle starts at the Mahoning Valley's #1 new car dealer, Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
And we're back in the studio. I'm going to put my headphones on here. Hold on a second so I can hear. Mark Preto with me, Youngstown State University football video coordinator. And our studios are proudly sponsored by G. Burbick Farms. It just tastes better. Black Angus Farm raised beef. Nothing but the best. I've heard nothing but great things about G. Burbick Farms. And thank you for sponsoring us in the studio. Mark Preto, and talking about his illustrious career in the NFL with the Titans, Niners, worked for the Browns a little bit, currently with YSU, Oregon State, USC, Akron, and Mark, coming up from Cleveland, you have been around just about every place, and I find your career fascinating. We've talked often. Youngstown State, brand new head coach this year. Doug Phillips retains you on the staff, and you mentioned it's a little bit nerve-wracking when coaches change, but Doug thought enough of you to retain you from the prior regime with Bo Pelini. I don't want to put you on the spot too badly, but what do you think happened under Bo's regime at Youngstown State that ultimately came up a little bit short from expectations?
It's hard to say. I mean, I really couldn't put a finger on it. I'm not there in the classrooms or any of that kind of stuff, so it's kind of hard to say what didn't meet expectations. Ultimately, whether at the end of the day, it's what you do in the field, and it just, for whatever reason, some things, like, you have a great first half and you have a bad second half, and it's it's hard to say what, where, why, and how.
Don't you think the conference is very difficult and challenging for them?
Yes, I mean, I think everyone agrees with that. I mean, you've got North Dakota State pretty much runs itself probably like a MAC school with their ability to do some stuff. Same with maybe South Dakota State a little bit, and they're also out there where, you can choose to go to Kansas State and be a second team guy, or you can come out to the Dakotas, you're kind of in the area, and you can be first team, or you can go to Iowa or Minnesota. So you're like, here we're having to compete against the MAC, the Big Ten, even ACC with Syracuse and some other things like that. So, there's some challenges, but I know this coaching staff is going to do a great job of that. That's been the first thing of focus for this new staff coming in, is to get and build relationships and with local area coaches and local kids.
Now, you know what? Tell me if it's not like this, because I'm involved with YSU sports, basketball and football, and even for the Scrappers. To me, it was, because there's a lot of plane flights and there's a lot of traveling. And then when you're in a conference play, it's fascinating the first time that you visit these cities. But as the years roll on, it's like, and you know where all the hot spots are. I get to go back out here again. And there were certain places that were less appealing than others. For me, it was Carbondale in southern Illinois, or western Illinois. It was also another one for me. But it was just, to me, I began to dread some of those trips. As much as I enjoyed them the first time, okay, seen here, been there, done this. But I guess the one good thing is that you at least knew where the local establishments were and where you wanted to go to eat and whatnot.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think it's probably more so I had that chance more in the NFL than here recently. Just mostly because I need to be around. I'm the only person, so I need to be around the hotel as long as we're meetings and things like that. We get to meet with the team. So if I choose not to meet with the team, yeah, like we're going to Fargo or especially Sioux City or Sioux Falls since we're there a lot. There's a little Irish pub there. I'll go grab a shepherd's pie or something like that. Yeah, it sounds cliche, but okay. But yeah, but in recent years with the Niners, we have hotel duties, and I would always do the home ones, and then the away games I always have the Saturday afternoons off. So when you're going to New York City and these other places, or even when especially like we go to Nashville, you have some friends, you get to go and find these places. Like I know a lot of people may have not been to New Orleans, but we've been there enough where through friendships that I've had in Nashville and some friends that came down because her husband lives on the other side. They call it North Shore, and they showed us all the nice little places off of Bourbon Street.
Oh yeah, fascinating.
But yeah, you definitely get to. Even got to go to Mobile and was on the phone with a friend of mine this morning that I met back there in 2008. So you get, like you're saying, you find these nice little places you want to go and eat and stuff. For us it's a business trip, so we're not going to go crazy out on a night. But it's a business trip. So, but you get to, like I say, we're going to Fargo. You know where to go grab something to eat. There's a little taco place over there. Sioux Falls at Irish Pub. Yeah, as you're saying, when you're getting into western and southern Illinois, and some of those places there's not much going on, but you can kind of find something a little bit.
Mark, there was a place in western Illinois. I guess it was the hot spot. And I say this because a lot of fans travel with the Youngstown State programs over the years, and they can relate. There was a place, literally, the name of the establishment was the Purple Pit, and it about lived up to its billing there with its namesake. But I was like, hey, everybody's going to the Purple Pit. So follow the YSU program around. You know the hot spots if you've been doing it for a long time. We had Doug.
Absolutely.
We had Doug Phillips in here, and he's taken over for Bo Pelini, and I was just mesmerized by the guy. First of all, he was in here along with President Trussell, former longtime head coach with Youngstown, of the 6 1AA title appearances. I would think for a first-year head coach, it would be somewhat intimidating to have Coach Trussell, President Trussell to your left, but Doug took the bull by the horns, and I was impressed with his enthusiasm, and he seems to have a vision for the Youngstown State University football program, and I think he's hungry, and I think that's going to be an advantage for the red and white this campaign with having Doug around, because I think he wants to build something here. He's a new Middletown guy. He's been very successful, and I think he wants to bring Youngstown State football back to the superior heights and the popularity that it used to enjoy at one time.
Yeah, correct. I mean, he was here when that happened. He's from here. He's a very intelligent man. Knows, he's being a superintendent in his past for schools. He's very well organized. He has a very clear vision. He's brought on a lot of great young minds, young talented coaches. Going through this crisis, and having to coach remotely, I think he's the perfect person that can handle that. You know, he's soothing. He's always trying to teach everybody something. You know, make sure that this is getting done. You know, he sent me a text this morning, just making sure what we had sent coaches home with, and just make sure he's up to speed on that. So yeah, he's got a plan in place. You know, unfortunately, he got derailed a little bit with spring ball, but you know, I don't know that's going to derail us too much.
And that takes a load off of you, too, because you would have been working for the spring if not due to the corona scare. But one thing about Doug Phillips, too, that I think serves to his advantage, he is a guy that had worked at all administrative levels, too. And I think that's going to be just a wonderful, huge plus for him going into his first year being a head coach. When you've done it at so many different levels, including at the administrative level, that is going to serve to your benefit.
Oh, absolutely. You know, he knows how to talk to people. He knows especially how to talk to students, you know, that he had in the past. You know, it still carries with him, and he knows how to, like you're saying, manage stuff. He understands those things, but he has goals and has visions and things we need to get done. So, you know, it's just a matter of getting everything together and getting it done.
You know, you've been through all these stadiums, and we talked about the locations and going repeatedly to these different places. As far as doing the video shooting and different places, what are some of your favorite all-time stadiums that you got to do video from, and why was it special to you to be at these particular places?
I think one would be Three Rivers, just because
Really, Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, because I never got to go to Cleveland, and I never got to do old New England Stadium. I did, you know, Chicago Bears. There's these histories, and I'm there before. It's Three Rivers, Old Three Rivers. I'm there with Chicago before the UFO landed on it. You know, because it was still had the history. You still pulled in that back, and part of it, we pulled in the back of the Bear Stadium. It still had the stands from the Olympics back in the day. So there were stands still there. So, you know, you walked. Green Bay is always special, period. I don't care.
Lambeau, oh my. I just got to see the outside of it, Mark, and I was blown away. I was like, man, I wanted to go inside so badly, but you were inside of it.
Oh, I'm taking, yeah. You know, when you're in there and some of the old Packers, and the great Packers quarterback is getting on the elevator with you, but it's also a special place. You know, it's almost like your crosstown rival in high school or something like that. It's a very community thing. You know, everyone's very friendly. You get brats on your way out, so and at lunch, in halftime, and things or whatever. I always laugh. Or one of the interesting ones was you're going to old Dallas Irving, post 9/11, and you're coming up out of you know, it's an old stadium, and you're climbing up a ladder to get to where you need to get to, and there's a sniper sitting right there, and you think, oh, sorry, brother.
That's the House of God bill, right? In the old stadium.
The House of God bill.
Yeah, right. So the reputed story was somebody said they were too cheap to put in air conditioning, but somebody, of course, the Cowboys said, you know, we wanted to have it so God could watch the Cowboys play his team. So that was interesting.
Well, it wasn't a dome; it was open at the top, and the sides were actually open. So it was actually not actual roof, so it could blow through. So God can watch it too.
You know what? I got to talk to you about this too, Mark. I did an interview several years ago with Steve Sable, past since NFL Films, one of the founders, along with his father, Ed, and that was a fascinating time. But Steve said that, you know, going to Irving, Texas, and filming there for his crew was a nightmare because of the top and the sun shining down in the way it did. It would create shadows at various points during the day, which created, in terms of film filter, because the NFL Films used film. They used actual film. But he said it created nightmares. Now, were there certain stadiums, just from the, even from the videotaping standpoint, that created shadows or spots that were very difficult for you to parlay in?
Oh, Dallas for sure. It was a nightmare. I mean, video, it's a little forgiving versus film, which is why the old video guys probably got paid a lot more than the new guys that are currently there because they had to have that skill. You know, Seahawks Stadium, you know, depending on what side you're on, if you're doing sideline, it's not really shadows, there's a lot of climbing. I know the Titans, I was in great shape just because of getting to the top of that scoreboard. Tampa wasn't too bad as far as getting to places. I know before New Orleans redid theirs, you were kind of in the crosswalk in the interior at the roof of the dome. So if you fell off to your right, they wouldn't find you till they tore it down.
Oh boy!
So it wasn't bad. Just not too many nightmares. I mean, everyone's kind of has now nice bunkers. You're not really outside. So in terms of like just shooting wise, what you're talking about, more Dallas. I think everybody else anticipates it. Everyone has a shadow. You learn how to shoot around that.
Interesting. And then what about crowds? What about rowdy crowds? We hear about who has the best fan base, who has the loudest fan base. Mark Preto, you were at so many different stadiums. What did you find as far as crowd support and home field advantage?
I always like going to Oakland and listening to the Black Hole because sometimes they'll say something stupid. You can come right back with a joke at them, and then then they'll stop with you. We were in Philly with in Philly, so we were there with the Niners, and it was nice. And then by the next night, that night it was 8 inches of snow. We actually postponed the game for about a couple of hours, and they never cleaned the interior of the stadium, so there was a big snowball fight that day. You always saw fights in Buffalo, but that's Buffalo. Never played Cleveland. Never had an issue. I've never seen that. In fact, I was with. It was 2000. It was a nice warm day, and everyone was showing up in shorts in December. So, Buffalo was. Buffalo got mad at us when I was at the Titans, and they beat us that day. But then, as we're leaving, they're still mad about the miracle and we're throwing some bottles at us. But and
the whole crew, was responsible.
But Seattle's special. I mean, there's a guy in Seattle that I think he's been even in media. He's just he knows everybody. He knew who I was when I came out of the tunnel and everything else. And it's just everyone just kind of like I just turned around and kind of joked back with him and got to. So I would come out and say hi, type of thing. He'd give me shit. He'd go, "Oh, you look like you're getting fatter again. Thanks." But he goes, "Here, shake my hand." Then he pulls away and says, "Well, don't forget your Christmas card's coming." So you have some. There's fun, for the most part. No, really. I'm not on the field, so I don't. And all the fans want to wave at me because they think they're getting on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. How far from the act? What was the closest that you were ever to the action doing videographing throughout your career? Did you do direct sideline at all, or no?
Yeah, so I never did sideline per se. I did one game in New Orleans, but I was mostly end zone. So most of the end zones, like in Santa Clara, Levi Stadium, you're kind of in there with the crowd. Green Bay, one end zone now that they've kind of raised it, you're kind of in there with the crowd. But everyone's in a bunker. Like even in Denver, you're in a bunker. I mean, the only one that was kind of difficult was the old Giants-Jet Stadium, just because if it was a great play coming towards that end zone, everyone just stood up and cheered, and they got in your shot. But
and I can imagine because go ahead. I'm just going to say, but the players, talking to each other down on the field, it was in all the cinematography with the films in slow motion that NFL Films had us grow up on. It's a nasty game down there on the field.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've never been on the game, down there for the field to see the power of those guys, the speed those guys have. I see it, in the weight room. I see it in practice. But at the Pro Bowl, you watch those guys go, but they're not really going hard anyway. So, but yeah, on field, I don't get to see too much because I'm not down there. But I did see one guy try to make an ice ball that was trying to throw it at us. I think sometime, I can't remember what game it was. That was a sideline game. I wasn't shooting the end zone. I was editing that game.
And he was throwing ice balls at you?
No, they looked like he wanted to hit ice. He wanted to, but we kept staring at him.
Hey, one thing, too, and I want to go back to Doug Phillips when he was in here, the first-year head coach, is you begin an association with his regime with Youngstown State football in 2020. Doug said something that fascinated me. He goes, John, and this is probably going to play into your territory, Mark. He said, I want to watch my players' body language when things don't go well. I want to see who's holding their head down, who's showing defeatism, who's showing negativism. I want all positive, and I want that head up. I want to see, and this is an important thing to him, and I believe that's going to factor you in as well, being responsible for some of that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we're here to serve the coaches, so whatever he needs, whatever they really want, is what we'll do. I know I've seen some practice film from Cincinnati, so I understand what he's talking about. We've been out there shooting the mat drills prior to spring break. Unfortunately, we lost that after spring break, or because of the extended spring break. But yeah, they watch for everything. They're looking for a guy who's kind of tired and has his hands on his knees. They're looking for those things. That way, you don't want to show that you're just, tired. You don't want to show that you're vulnerable. So, that's something that he's definitely looking for. It's a matter of pushing guys through the mental blocks and the physical blocks that they think they have.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, because you hear, even from the NFL perspective, on, huge game reflections in the past, and you'll hear from quarterbacks that'll say, I remember looking across the line of scrimmage and they were breathing heavy, or they had their heads down, and we knew we had them right then and there. So, video doesn't lie. Film at one time, now video, it doesn't lie. And Mark, thank you for doing a great job for us on the program today. Nothing but the best of luck to you with the Youngstown State University football Penguins as you begin a partnership with brand new head coach Doug Phillips in 2020. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, it's why my license plate says "Eye in the Sky."
Eye in the sky. I love it. Looking at you, Alan Parsons Project. That's Mark Preto, the Youngstown State University video coordinator. Is going to be involved with the football program. Speaking of football, we're coming back with the final hour of this Tuesday edition of Breaking Batch, presented to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in both Austintown and Hubbard. And, of course, due to the corona situation, they are on hiatus. They'll reevaluate on April the 6th and be back, hopefully good to go for business. But